Thank you for joining us. The Shalom Show, on the air since 1979, presents a variety of subjects from culture to education and so much more. And when it comes to politics, we impartially have both Democrats and Republicans sharing their views. And today we have Senator Norman Coleman and Mayor Rudy Giuliani of New York with their comments on the election campaign and the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy following these messages. With us now is Senator Coleman. It's a pleasure and honor to have you on the show, sir.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
We're witnessing a dramatic time in history. How important is this election?
I think the fate of America lies in this election because we've got two paths. We got the path that President Obama has taken us on, path of bigger government, path of more debt, path of higher taxes, a path of unemployment that is only equaled by what we experienced during the Great Depression. And then we have Governor Romney, who has a path of opportunity rather than entitlement, a path where America leads rather than America leads from behind, a path that really grows jobs because he knows how to grow jobs because he's spent 25 years in the private sector and understands what it takes to grow jobs. He actually believes that you built it and not the government building it. So as clear a choice, as clear a difference in visions, and I'm very optimistic. Americans will not vote for revenge, as President Obama has talked about, but they'll vote for America. They'll vote for their country. They'll vote for jobs. They'll vote for American greatness, and they'll vote for Mitt Romney.
No, no, no. Don't boo, vote. Vote. Voting's the best revenge.
Yesterday, the president said something you may have heard by now that I think surprised a lot of people. Speaking to an audience, he said, voting is the best revenge. He told his supporters, voting for revenge. Vote for revenge? Let me tell you what I'd like to tell you. Vote for love of country.
What an odd term, revenge as a motivation to vote. How important is this election to Jewish Americans in your view?
Well, it's critically important. And let me just say, in part, I think the president, uttered that because he's not running on a record. He's not running on, we spent $850 billion in a stimulus in which the president promised to bring unemployment down to like 5.4%. Over 43 months of above 8%. Unemployment today is higher than it was when the president took office. And so with no record to run on, what are you going to ask people to vote for? There's not a vision for the future and there's not a record to run on. So for some reason, maybe you should have revenge that Mitt Romney is actually deeming to run against him. It's actually stunning. But for Jewish Americans in particular, and for those of us on two levels. First, if you care about Israel. This president has created and talked about openly that we need to have space between the U.S. and Israel. And we have. He has disparaged the Democratic elected Prime Minister of Israel. He had him walk out of a back door at the White House. We didn't do a press conference. So our enemies see that. Our enemies see how we treat our allies. And if you're treating your allies with disrespect, your enemies say, well, let's take advantage of that void. And our enemies have. And Iran has moved continuously closer to getting a nuclear weapon. They've spun thousands of centrifuges under this president. He originally opposed the tougher sanctions that were proposed by Congress, bipartisan effort in Congress. Democrats and Republicans came together and said, we've got to put sanctions on the Bank of Iran. The president had opposed those. If Mitt Romney had been president, those sanctions would have been imposed 2 or 3 years earlier. The goal here is to make sure that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon. You don't want to go to war with Iran. But the way you get the Iranians to respond is not through weakness, not through this president, not wanting to offend the mullahs. Not wanting to, when that young girl Netta was lying on the streets of Iran during the beginning of the Green Revolution, not wanting to say a word about that because he thought it would upset the mullahs. That breaks my heart. And so in the end, the way you get peace is through strength. John Kennedy understood that. Ronald Reagan understood that. President Obama and Jimmy Carter didn't understand that, and as a result, under both those regimes, America was weaker around the world. We're weaker today than we were 4 years ago. Iran's closer to getting a nuclear weapon than it was 4 years ago. The Russian reset has got us nowhere. And so if you care about Israel, and then let me also add that it's not just about Israel for American Jews. We care about America. We care about jobs. We care about quality health care. We've got Obamacare, $500 billion in new taxes, $1 trillion in new debt. Independent payment advisory boards, which will kind of decide for what kind of medical care that you can get, and taking $720 billion out of Medicare to pay for Obamacare. So across the board, certainly for those who consider Israel so important, this president has created space. This president has let Iran get closer to getting a nuclear weapon. Israel is less secure than it was 4 years ago. But beyond that, on the economy, on health care, on jobs, on America, I think Jews, like every other American, should say, we can do better. We can do much better. And Barack Obama hasn't delivered. Mitt Romney will.
Senator, this has been most interesting. I know you're in a hurry to go to other locations, so thank you very much. I hope to do another interview with you in the future.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here in Florida. It's always been the center of the political universe. It will be the center of the political universe again on November 6th. What's interesting is, I said, folks, when I came, it's great to be at a place where your vote counts, because in Minnesota, my vote didn't usually count. Well, now this race is tied up in Minnesota, and it's tied up in Pennsylvania, it's tied up in Ohio, and it's tied up in Wisconsin, it's tied up in Michigan. Votes are counting in a lot of places, and that's a good thing. I think Americans are ready for real change, not what they got 4 years ago.
Very interesting. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Great.
The level of devastation at the Jersey Shore is unthinkable.
We're going to see what we can do. I mean, we got to prioritize, so we're just going to try to, work through, obviously, folks' homes, making sure, power's back on, making sure the streets are cleared, all the debris is gone.
People there feel very abandoned. They feel very alone, and we're using the Scylla Foundation to try to raise money to try to help people, so it'll directly go to people in Staten Island, Breezy Point, and the Rockaways. I believe, you could have gone either way on what the mayor decided, and I don't think this is a time to be criticizing him. I think his instinct was the right instinct. Try to get things going, try to get people to lift their eyes up. Apparently, people are still suffering so much that maybe it would have been impossible to do. I think it was a close call. You could have gone either way. I support the mayor in making those decisions. And this is not a time to be criticizing Mayor Bloomberg, Governor Cuomo, Governor Christie. They're doing the very best that they can, and I think they're doing a pretty darn good job. I don't know what the heck he was doing in Nevada while people are still being discovered dead in New York. I mean, if I were the President of the United States, I sure wouldn't be flitting around the Midwest and the West, and my job would be making sure this thing was followed through to the very end. Maybe the first couple of days he was keeping his eye on the ball, but we got gas lines now that are a mile long. We got bodies still being discovered, and we got a president who's playing, campaigner-in-chief. But this has been the story of Barack Obama from the very beginning. I mean, what the heck is he doing, flying all over the country and not keeping his attention on what's going on there and making sure people don't have to wait until November 11th or November 12th for the power to go back on? I don't see how he's spending any time focused on this. Mitt Romney has no responsibilities here. He's the challenger. He actually cut off his campaigning. At every one of these rallies, he asked for contribution. Nobody can substitute for the President of the United States. Nobody. He's the commander-in-chief. It's his responsibility. And what we have here is a commander-in-chief who's constantly putting the responsibility elsewhere. The economy, it's George Bush's fault. Benghazi, Hillary Clinton's fault. Well, the buck stops with the President of the United States.
This concludes our special show for today. I'm Richard Peritz. Thank you for being with us.